Football's my common ground. I'll tell you this, and that's why I share this to everyone when I was out there too. All I tried to do was hopefully make this game, and I know it sounds so simple, but maybe I'm too soft in this, but hey, it worked out. All I wanted them to do when they stepped on that field, anytime they stepped onto the field, they came out there and they were having a blast.
Welcome to Football IQ on the Coaching Coordinator Network. This series is about a part of football that matters as much as anything we do as coaches, and that's football IQ. We spend a lot of time talking about scheme, technique, drills, and game plans, but at the end of the day, the players who separate themselves and the teams that play the fastest are usually the ones that understand the game at a deeper level. They can recognize structure, process information, anticipate what is coming, and make better decisions in real time. That's becoming harder to teach. Players today see a lot of football, but they often see it in clips, highlights, and short segments on social media. They're watching plays, but not always learning the game in full context. That's why we wanted to build this series. With Football IQ, presented by American Football IQ, we're going to talk with coaches and teachers of the game about how they develop smarter players, how they train recognition and decision-making, and how they help athletes truly understand what they're seeing. If you want to help your players see the game more clearly and play with more confidence, check out our partner, American Football IQ. They're building tools and resources that help players, coaches, and parents grow their understanding of the game. The link is in the show notes. Let's get into today's episode.
Welcome to the Coaching Coordinator Podcast. This is our Football IQ series. Football IQ isn't just plays. It's anticipating defenses on offense, reading routes as a defender, spotting stunts or blitzes before they land. When everyone's fast and strong, the sharpest mind on either side of the ball wins. That's what we're exploring today with a true master. I want to introduce Danny Mitchell, run game coordinator and running backs coach at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. He's a San Diego native like me. From quarterback to Willamette University to coaching high school champs at Bishops and Christian, both in San Diego, then building titles overseas. He was a head coach for Osnabrück Tigers in Germany, OC for the Karlstad Crusaders in Sweden, and European champion winner with the Vienna Vikings. He was inducted into the European Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2023, plus he's had NFL stops like the Buccaneers National Coaching Academy and the Pittsburgh Steelers Bill Walsh Fellowship as well. Danny, great to have you. How's it feel circling back to college ball at UAB after all the globetrotting?
Well, it makes me feel old, first of all. As you reading that out, I'm like, man, I've been a lot of different places, man. I feel very fortunate and blessed. And I think, Doug, the whole reason we get to be here is it's about relationships and people. I know it's cliche in football, but I'll tell you, coming back to college football, it started with people. When the former head coach here got the job, I wasn't ever planning going from Vienna, Austria to coming to Birmingham, Alabama. And here I am because of people. And our new head coach, Alex Mortensen, who you had a chance to meet a little earlier, man, he's the whole reason I'm here. And I tell you that because, man, this is a game and it should be fun. And I'm having an absolute blast. And I've been lucky to coach this all over the world and getting to coach this game in 21 different countries. And to get to do it at the highest level of college football, it's an absolute blessing, man. And again, I'm just enjoying every moment with the guys I get to do this with, the people I get to be around. And man, I can't, again, tell you how much I appreciate you. Our relationship goes back 9 years now. That's why I got gray hair. I'm getting older and older, but I'll tell you, what you do for this game and what you're doing for this game will affect this entire world. And so, man, I appreciate you letting me be a part of this, man.
Man, I didn't even pay you to say that, so I appreciate it. One of the things I noticed about you from Jump Street is that you're authentic, you're yourself, you're confident, you treat people well. And so, it's great that you've been afforded all these opportunities and blessings in your life because you definitely pay it back for sure. And you're just a guy that people want to root for. So good to have you, man. So let's dive into some of the meat potatoes here. The series is Football IQ, so we want to make sure we lock in on that. So growing up in San Diego, playing QB, what early moment flipped you from athlete to coach? Was it seeing schemes click or was it something else?
I'll tell you, I think it's what I was born into, because my dad, he's going on year 46 of coaching high school football and baseball in the San Diego area. So I'm an August baby. So the very first time, I ever came to this earth, the first place I was brought, usually in August, is fall camp. So I came from the hospital. My mom and dad tell me this. I came from the hospital to the football field. That's the very first place. So football field is literally my home. So I guess it starts there. But as a player, to answer your question of being an athlete transitioning to a coach, I think that's how I always played the game. And not just football, I think all of sports. I had always been in a leadership position. I played football, baseball, basketball in high school, always in some type of captain role. But the way I played, I was a D3 quarterback, a backup D3 quarterback at that. I say that because the only way I would have success in this game is the other people. And that's what I love about football more than anything. And I say that because when I was a high school player, it really transitioned from me being a player to a coach because that's the only way I could succeed. So as a high school player, I had great coaches. I got to shout out my high school coach, David Beezer, Matt Oliver. My dad was the defense coordinator, so he was on the other side and have to get yelled at by my dad, But, I was in a high school offense that empowered me. We went to the championship my junior and senior year, the CIF championship. And, my senior year, half that game, Coach Beezer, put it on me. We ran an offense that was very check with me. So I was almost empowered and forced to understand to answer your question about scheme. I was empowered and forced to understand the game at a high level in order for us to be successful. And I say that because, man, I've always looked at becoming a coach is just my way of being a player. And it's why I ended up transitioning to play college football. I actually got a baseball scholarship out of high school before I played football. I played 2 years of college baseball, but I knew I wanted to coach. And that's what I knew at a very young age that I wanted to be a football coach. And I don't want to hold you too long, but I can give you that story, man, if you're open to how I got into coaching.
Let's do it.
When I was 16 years old, going on to 17, really, going into my senior year, a guy named Tom Martinez took me under his wing. So when I was a young quarterback, we didn't have guys like you. I wish I did. I wish I had guys that would train specifically this position, the quarterback position. But back then, there wasn't that. There were these big camps. And so I'd go to these big camps and I really wasn't learning anything. But my grandfather played with Tom Martinez. And I didn't know who Tom Martinez was. Guy from up in the Bay Area, was the head coach of College of San Mateo. And I will say he's the best coach I've ever been around. He's very well known for being Tom Brady's coach. And so how did I get into coaching? Well, I'm going into my senior year. I want to just get better at this league, at this game. I go up there, there's 12 quarterbacks there. One of them is 3-time Super Bowl champion, Tom Brady, who was my partner, who I got to play catch with. The other one was this quarterback that's playing at Kent State. His name was Julian Edelman. So I say this, man, when you're a kid and you're getting to play catch with those guys, and Coach Martinez really took me under his wing, man, it bought me into being, man, I want to coach. I want to do this. And so when I went to go play baseball first, Coach Martinez would fly me around the country with him during the off season to do camps. Well, I'll give you this story, man. So this is the year the Patriots are going, they just went undefeated the year before and lost to the Giants in that Super Bowl. We remember that one. The following year, a guy named Matt Gutierrez ended up becoming the starter for 1 week versus the Bills. Well, Coach Martinez, this is going into my sophomore year of college baseball. Coach Martinez calls me up. He said, "Hey, I want to fly you up to the Bay Area. I've got a quarterback I want you to train." He doesn't tell me who it is. I'm 19, coach. I'm 19 at this time. Flies me up. My College of San Mateo. Matt Gutierrez walks out. He's like, "Hey, you're going to help coach him. You want to talk about empowerment?" I'm 19 years old and to watch an NFL, man, this is an NFL quarterback, right? And coach is like, "Go. You know what you're talking about. Talk to him like you talk to me," right? And Matt, to take coaching from a 19-year-old, which he shouldn't. I'm a baseball player at the time too. I'm not even playing football. But man, it empowered me to have some confidence in coaching this game. And then watching Matt go out and beat the Bills the very next week, I decided right then and there, hey, I want to coach college football. I want to coach football. And a lot of times, to coach at the college level, you got to play at the college level. So how I ended up at Willamette was Mark Speckman was the head football coach. He recruited me in high school. I loved Coach Speckman. I chose to go up to Willamette because I wanted to end up coaching. Man, I know this is how things work out. My senior year, after I'm done playing at Willamette, Coach Speckman takes the Menlo College head coach job, and I was his first hire. So I was his quarterback coach, and I helped call the offense with him, and that's kind of the start of the journey, man.
That's amazing. I didn't know any of that. I mean, I obviously knew about Tom Martinez, that opportunity to be around your high school coach as well, Coach Beezer. Coach Speckman, I've always had a tremendous amount of respect for. And his story is, if you haven't heard his story, go look it up. It's pretty empowering once you think about that. That's awesome. I mean, it shows, people saw your ability to command a room. And that was one of the things I was impressed by you, when I first met you. There's a lot of humility that you have, and you don't come across as a know-it-all. But you're confident in what you speak. You brought up playing multiple sports. In today's day and age, there's so many kids and parents that want their kids to specialize, and they want their kids to be able to put themselves in a position to get a scholarship or get NIL deals down the road, right? Like, what do you think playing multiple sports did for your IQ as an overall athlete?
I think one of the most overlooked things, I'll say this as a college football coach when I'm recruiting, I'll tell you exactly what I'm looking for in our room. I'm looking for guys that play multiple sports. And here's why. To answer both sides of it. Number one, I think the motor skills, obviously, it translates. That there's just in general, just to play and compete. But there's the word I'm really going at, right? I think more importantly, why I love kids that play multiple sports is it teaches you to compete. And arguably in other sports that you're not as good at. You could be the star football player, but on the basketball team, you're the sixth man, or you might be a bench player. So the intangibles we're looking for, being a great teammate, because here's the reality, man. You want to play. I get it. A lot of parents and kids, they want to play at our level. There's 1% of you guys that end up getting a chance at our spot, and then the next 1% go to the next level. So I say that the game's the same all over the world. And being in NFL organizations, arguably with one of the greatest of all time with Mike Tomlin, those are the core values that will make you great in the most ultimate team game there is. This is the only sport, in my opinion, that really highlights you as a teammate more than just your individual ability, because you could be great. You could be the best quarterback in the world. Those front five guys aren't blocking for you. It's going to hurt from your back. Doesn't work as well. And I say that because, man, going back to the multiple sports question, really, to me, it teaches and it instills the intangibles of competition. What great people, great athletes, what I think in anything in life, what you lean back on. Hey, can it be about more than just you? And that's why I love specifically football in that, because it is the only sport where it can't be just about you, because it's impossible to succeed. In other sports, if you're a pitcher, man, you can be dominant, right? If you're a golfer, that's an individual sport. Football's not like that. So that's why it's so important to me about multiple sport athletes, because I want to see someone that understands how to compete and be great teammates first. And then if you have the ability to play at this level, you'll play. And that's the same thing in the NFL. There's so many great stories of guys that they had a different path to get there, but they last for a long time because they were great team. Man, I mean, you saw a signing yesterday, right? Let's just call it how it is. Like Kirk Cousins just signed a great deal. You know why? Because he's a great teammate. He's my age, and he's playing NFL quarterback guaranteed for 5 more years because he's a great teammate. And I don't know the man from Adam, but I'll tell you, that's something that definitely stands out about him.
Yeah, no doubt. There's no question. There's a book that Dan Casey just came out with, Bring Your Own Pencil, and talked about bringing in somebody to the 49ers. That was a veteran. Can't remember the guy's name, but he really helped set the culture, as far as like how things are done. And so, yeah, that's part of being a great teammate and doing things the right way, because you are dependent on people doing their job, right? No, it's good. That's good stuff. I mean, we could kind of take it on that direction and talk more about stuff that you brought up. I want to pivot back here. So you mentioned players across different positions, running backs, quarterbacks, all these different deals through camps. You've been in analyst roles. You've been on staffs. What's the first thing you do if you have somebody that you're bringing in for the first time? Do you quiz them on identifying defensive front schemes, anticipating how it's going to play out, and try to see where they're at? Like, how do you onboard somebody?
It goes right back to what we just talked about. It's understanding that this game is always about people. And now to transition that to like what you were just talking about, and what you have to offer is incredible. The flashcards that you're talking about, man, what an expedited way to learn this game. But I do think where it first starts, and I see you do it all the time with the guys you work with, it starts with knowing you, right? As an individual and then as a team. Because why do I say it starts with the people? I think that's how you design, and let's talk specifically offense, right? It starts there, and I say that as someone that is coached at every different level. of every level that there is, and all different types of people, right? Like where English wasn't their first language. But the system, the offensive system, has actually always been the same. We run the offense, but it might look a little different. So why do I start there? I start there because if you understand yourself, you understand the people around you and what your objective is, you know your identity, you know what you want to do, which is so crazy to say, but I think a lot of people don't start at that base. If you don't understand you and your strengths, then how do you build a system from there? And I think there's a lot of times, now I'm going to take this over to football right here, right? There's a lot of times, I'll say this for coordinators, right? There's a lot of times, hey, this is what we do. What if the people can't do it? And I got so many stories that you saw that with Bishops. At Bishops, when we first met, the year before, 2016, we win the CIF title. Our quarterback throws 60 touchdowns versus 3 interceptions, throws for almost 5,000 yards. The following year, now going into 2018, after that, Jeffrey graduates. Tyler Buckner was our quarterback going in that next year. He committed to Notre Dame. 4 plays into the season, he has a season-ending injury. And we move our center to quarterback. I don't know how many people do this, and I don't recommend it, by the way, but I would say this. The results didn't change. And so why do I say it starts with your people? Well, if I tried to do with when our center, his name was Dominic Haley. I love telling this story because I do believe it talks about what football really, truly is about. If we as a staff require Dominic to do what Tyler does, we're not going to have that success. But again, it goes back to the holistic understanding, right? Dominic came from playing the center position. Well, what do you think we probably did more? We ran the ball a little more. Things that highlighted his strengths. And now instead of it being, hey, now his growth would be, okay, we're gonna teach this top down instead of inside the box and out, which what you offer. I mean, man, I would have loved to have those flashcards when I was coaching the high school. I'll tell you that right now, man. But I'll tell you, that to me is why I start with man, it starts with knowing you, knowing it's a people game first. It's knowing what you want to do, what is your identity, and then making sure that identity fits the people you're with. And at that time, when I was coaching Bishops, I was also out in Sweden. Those offenses, it's the same offense. If I threw on the film, you would be like, those are 2 different offenses. Well, yeah, I have 3 NFL offensive linemen out in Sweden. Of course, we're a little different, but again, that was our people. It's understanding the people first. So I hope that answers the question a little bit, but the last term I would use in this, man, is I do think for coaches, this hopefully things that you're doing are adaptable to those people. I think that's the most important part, right? Can you adapt on the fly? That's what this game requires, right? This game is a game of chaos, right? Can you adapt to the requirements of chaos? So I hope that answers it.
Yeah. Today's episode is presented by American Football IQ. One of the biggest challenges coaches face right now is this. Players are seeing more football than ever, but they are not always learning how to understand the game in full context. They watch clips, they see highlights, but they don't always learn how to recognize coverage, identify fronts, understand leverage, or connect what is happening before and after the snap. That is why tools that help teach football IQ matter. American Football IQ is built to help players learn the game visually through flashcards that train recognitions, coverages, fronts, protections, gap control, the kind of things players have to see faster if they want to play fast. This is not just about memorizing terms. It's about helping players recognize patterns quicker, process information faster, and play with more confidence when the ball is snapped. So whether you're coaching quarterbacks, skill guys, linemen, or just looking for a better way to teach the game, check out American Football IQ and see how they are helping players build real understanding that carries to the field. You can start with Volume 1 or get the full bundle at AmericanFootballIQ.com. There is also an online community that can be accessed on the AmericanFootballIQ.com website, where each flashcard has a video explaining it in more detail with film. Play fast. I've had a coach that I played for and then would later see at clinics, and he was always a very successful offensive coordinator. And so one of the things that he brought up to me was he had a term sheet that he would give all of his incoming freshmen. And they would have to learn what the terms were and the concepts were on that term sheet. And so when they started at fall camp, the expectation was like they had at least a basic understanding of what it meant. Was there anything that you do from that standpoint, before you actually installed the offense? Is there language that you guys utilize?
I think you hit it right on the head right there. Football is a language, right? Like football is a language. So it's about learning. And as someone that coached where English isn't the first language, right? It's about how do you implement into that language. And yes, so I think there's two ways you can do it. Truly is, right? And we talk about it all the time. I'm going to steal this quote from Coach Moore. There's two ways to learn Spanish. I'll use it because we're both from San Diego. It's the closest, Mexico's so close to us. Two ways you can learn it. You and I can go sit in a classroom and learn Spanish that way. And I know hola means hello. Or you can drop us off in Mexico City and say, hey, good luck. And by survival mode, you and I are going to learn the language, right? So why do I start? Why do I talk about that to answer your question there? Yes, there is a baseline to learning. That's why I started with, hey, do you know your people? Do you know what you want to do? Well, yes, it does start with how do we call things? What do we call things? There's two ways of doing it. Do you submerge into it, like you dropping into Mexico City? Or do you do it in the way of like, hey, this is a chair. We know this is what's called a chair, right? Like La Mesa, it's a table, I think, right? Like, here's my point.
Chair, mesa is table. Yep.
There we go. See, so I say this because I think in football, you have the opportunity to do both. And so I say this to you, Doug, but I'm going to keep saying this. What you are providing athletes, student athletes, is that you're offering them an opportunity to learn the language that is spoke all over the world. This is the one common language. And we're going to get to talk about that a little bit later. I know about talking about, hey, being around the world. You know what has submerged me into the world? This language of football. And, you were sharing with your product, it's spoken all over the world. So absolutely, there's a process to that, but I do think it's both. It's the drop in Mexico and also Spanish 101. So
I love it. So once they're in your position group, and I know you just had a meeting, and one of my guys, Roderick Robinson, is there and his brother Rashad will be coming in the fall. And so, take me through a meeting. Like you guys are in spring ball right now and you're watching the film. What are the types of things that you're bringing up in the meeting? Do you grade? And then, what's your standard operating procedure while you're in the meeting room giving information to the guys?
Well, I want to address this first of how we coach this running back room. It's a little different, I think, than most running back rooms are taught. I have a unique story. I've been a coordinator longer than I've been a position coach. I've been a head coach more than I've been a position coach. So I teach from a holistic part. And then again, I was a quarterback for a long time. Our running back room is taught from the quarterback's perspective. And what do I mean by that? It's not like, hey, you know what, we're playing the quarterback position. No. But the quarterback, as you know, one of the best in the world at training the position, Doug. You are one of the best. I've been all over the world. I think I have qualification to hopefully say that. What you do, the quarterback itself is the captain of the offense. Well, we treat our running backs the exact same way here. So they have to understand, we empower them to understanding all of it, not just, hey, this is what our room does. This is what our roles are. No, we do all of it. We require our running backs to play all 6 eligible positions. What do I mean by that? They're out wide. They're playing in the slot. We'll be in the hip like a tight end. And yes, we will actually be at the quarterback position. Something that's not talked about as well. That's why I'm starting this first here. We actually have to operate the cadence, which again, you and I know as quarterbacks, that's actually a lot harder than it might seem for people, but because it asks for command. So it starts there. So to go back to your question, your original question of how does our meeting room start when we just had our scrimmage, right? Well, yes, we're going to look at the big picture. I can't keep going without shouting out our other running backs coach, Henley Brigham. Henley had been the running back coach here for now going on his 10th year, I believe, here. He left for ULM last year. That's how I ended up being the running backs coach. He has come back, and him and I combined, man, I got one of the best running back coaches in the country with him. So the marry of having him, because he teaches the minute details of, dude, I'll tell you what this position is really about. Don't get tackled, right? I mean, that's as elementary as it gets. So the minute details of how not to get tackled. So we give them they understand the structure. We understand the possibility of what's going to happen defensively because that's the quarterback mindset. That's what we have to do, right? We're trying to protect ourselves the whole time. but also the same violence. I do believe the running back position, more than any other position, and not, heck, you and I are quarterbacks. It's the only position that actually plays real football, if you really think about it. Because again, I just listed, our running backs are required to, we have to know everything the quarterback knows. So that's playing quarterback position. We're required to carry the ball like a running back. We're required to catch the ball like every single skill guy. We also, all of our running backs play on every special teams. So we got to go tackle, right? We are immersed in every aspect of this game. So why do I start with, hey man, we are taught like quarterbacks, right? And hopefully, as you see the success of running backs through this program, but I'll say just in general, when you see what a great successful running back does, you are the highlight of what the team really looks like, right? If your running back room, in my opinion, is the pinnacle of what football should look like, if your team is doing that, they're playing like that, you got a shot, man. And so I can dive into the minute details of how we really break into how we prepare, but how a meeting room goes. But I do think it goes back to, man, what's the mindset? How do we really, in our mindset, to boil that all into one thing? Why I talk, we're taught like quarterbacks. What's the quarterback known to be on the team? The leader. We need to be the leader. And that's where everything starts with mindset to us, because if our mindset is, hey man, this thing goes through us, and now you have a quarterbacks thinking that, how good of a team could you be? Right. And that's where I start there. So hopefully that answers the question a little bit, and please dive in more, man.
I've coached that position as well, and you got to cross-train them to do multiple things, right? And I remember writing out descriptions on all my positions in my offense, and I say they're like a UFC fighter, right? You got to be able to have a great ground game. You got to be able to stay on your feet and be able to run and attack somebody while you still maintain balance to your feet. You got to be able to catch. You got to be able to do it all, right? You even say your guys need to be able to tackle on special teams. And so I've always had a lot of respect for running backs that I've been on teams with, the running backs I've coached. I mean, there was a running back that I played with, Keiki Massapequa. He's actually on the personnel side for University of Miami now. Like, that dude would, in practice, take a handoff and then finish all the way to the end zone. He literally did that every play and had that mentality. Our running back coach, when I was at the school at Palomar with him, would make our running backs just run till their tongues were hanging. I coached Henry Harris. I was at Southeast Missouri State, that did not start the year off on the Harlan Hill Trophy or the top performer, the FCS level. I'm trying to remember the name.
Walter Payton.
The Walter Payton Award, right? Sorry about that. So he didn't start the year off on that list, but he ended up getting on that list halfway through the year. And just the things that he did and how special he was, you feel a lot of confidence if you have a back that can make something happen. And it's a safety blanket for a quarterback as well, Quarterback knows he doesn't have to throw it out there all the time and drop back a ton. The times you do drop back, the defense doesn't know is always coming, right? So having a great running game, great running back is important for sure. That's good stuff. So Danny, as you think back to your coaches, the people that have been around you and have imparted wisdom on you, who do you think was the coach, or were some of the coaches that drilled football IQ in the deepest for you? What's stuck with you?
Man, I've gotten to be around some very, very great coaches, you including in that list, man. But I know it's a long list. I'll tell you, obviously, I shouted out Coach Martinez before. That's where it started. Obviously, being around my dad, getting to be around Mike T last year with Steelers, I mean, one of the greatest of all time. But I do want to list off some of these people because they've been so influential in my life. Mark Speckman, another guy. He has a great book that's called Figure It Out, right? A man that was born with no hands and was a college football All-American and coached, at Willamette. We were a top 10 team every year as a coach, being under him. Guy named Kelly Bills, he was the first OC I worked under when I went back to Willamette in 2013. I actually coached the running backs there in 2013 after Menlo College. And Kelly was the one that made me fall in love with offensive football. And then, going out to Germany, I had some great coaches out there, great people that I got to work with. I'll tell you, being at USD, Tanner Ingstrand, who's now with the Atlanta Falcons right up the road. Jim Jackson, who's the offensive line coach over at Harvard. Tyler Sutton, who's over at San Diego State. And then I got to GA for Al Borges. That was an incredible experience. He probably wore every college logo. And then, man, I'm very fortunate that there are two people that have really, I lost Coach Martinez back in 2012. We all did when he passed away. I'll tell you, there are two people that I look at, and I lost my grandfather in 2021, and to not make these guys feel old, but they have really taken a role as truly like grandfather figures, but also in the same profession I'm in. Norm Chow has been a huge influence on my life. Coach Chow calls me literally every other week just to check in, say how I'm doing. And then a guy that's named Rip Shear. He's coached college and NFL football for 50 plus years. He was our senior advisor here. He actually coached Trent when Trent was in the NFL. Those two men, they've poured so much into my life and continue to do it. And so, man, there are so many great coaches. Chris Kalaikai, who's the head coach of the Vienna Vikings. A lot of people might not know him. In Europe, a lot of those guys that go out there they're at the end of their career that coached at our level or at the NFL level. So they've won Super Bowls, won national championships. All those, we beat all of them. So I say that because man, there's some great coaches that a lot of times aren't recognized because they might not have worn the bigger logos, but those are the type of people. Again, there's one common trait about all of them though. They're all different. I listed a lot of different names, you included. They pour into others. And that's what this job is, right? Not even the job. I think that's for me. I was a backup. I keep saying that. I'm a backup D3 quarterback that got to hold the coach position. If any of those teams played like me, I'll tell you, even the teams out in Europe, we would have never won a game. But you know what? The opposite. It was about everyone else. You know what ended up happening? The opposite. I've never left that continent without a championship. And I say that because that was everyone else doing what they're doing. And I learned that from some of the best of the best of the best. So, man, I'm so grateful to be around. And again, man, the last guy, and I should have mentioned him before, Alex Mortensen, who I get to work with. I'm not just saying this because I wear this logo right here, man. I tell you, he's one of the most humble human beings you will ever be around. He worked under Coach Saban for 9 years. There's a reason Coach Saban wouldn't let him go. There's a reason he's the head coach here right now. You can see it. Coach Saban, arguably the greatest of all time at our level.
Yeah.
You see what Coach Saban says about Alex Mortensen. One of the most humble people, just exactly who I want to be. You talked about this game being about people. I love being with this man. I love him to death. And it's surrounded us with some other great coaches. Kevin Garver's here, who's our wide receivers coach, coached 10 years in the NFL, won the Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Riley Jeffers is our tight ends coach, came over from Ohio State. Our offensive line coaches, Gordon Steele, his dad's a well-known defensive coordinator for a long time, was in the NFL, was the defensive coordinator of Alabama. Matt McCants, who played here, man. Like the list goes on, but you learn from all of them. And then hopefully you take that. So us as coaches, hopefully I get to be a reflection of what they've poured into me. And then I get to put my original twist on it. And I think that's one of the best parts about coaching. So I know a long-winded answer, Doug, but
no, I love it. It goes back to the type of person you are. Relationships are vital in this industry. At the end of the day, you've got to take care of people, wherever they are on the organizational chart, wherever you are on the organizational chart, you got to treat people well, and being around people you want to spend time with, outside the building is, I think, important too. People that you would break bread with and spend time with their families and they spend time with yours. I think, that's a good thing for sure. You brought up some people that I've been exposed to as well. Norm Chow, I've done work with him with Hub Football, Don Yee's project, Tom Brady agent. So we would travel around and put together combine style workouts for guys that had already been in the pros, or trying to get back and have some relevant film and some measurements and all those types of things. So we would be on the field together. I got to coach with Norm Chow. That was special for me.
I went to one of those when I got the Vienna job. I came down. They ran one at Southwestern College, and that's one of the first times Coach Chow and I actually met. Man, what a small world!
That's awesome. And then Tanner, I remember Tanner was trying to get me over at USD back in the day when I was in the Midwest, and we've stayed in touch for a lot of years. I actually visited him last year when he was with the Jets. for OTAs, and that was pretty cool. Just being in that building and being with them, and was rooting for them all year, and texting them, after game. You know how it is, man. Like
Yeah.
for you guys going 100 miles an hour during the course of the year, try not to listen to all the outside noise, but it's cool to get a text back after from a friend, after a win and whatnot. Try to do that for him, but he's in a good spot now. I think there's two guys that I've been exposed to for the Falcons, Tanner and then Patrick Toney, another San Diego. Got some San Diego guys that are doing really well in the profession, and and take a lot of pride in that. Especially having coached in different parts of the country. But it's good stuff, man. I wanted you to share like a funny story from your experiences. Maybe it's somebody we know, maybe it's somebody we don't know, but what's kind of a lighthearted, funny story that you could think of throughout your coaching career?
I'll tell you this. Obviously, coaching in Europe is one of the, I can tell you, that's a great experience of its own. I'll give you this. I'll tell you about the European experience. I think a lot of people don't know that they actually play football in Europe. But, I think this is something that's unique. When I was coaching the Karlstad Crusaders, I was coaching the Crusaders out there. I'd coach the pro team on Saturday. I actually played on Sundays. I'd play in the, I think it's a funny story because how many coaches actually, you coach a game and then the very next day you go and play. It's tackle football. So I played on the adult team because a lot of these organizations out in Europe, they're about 500 deep. That's how, it goes all the way down to the youth program. In Europe, they don't have high school sports. That's not like what we get to have out here in the States. So everything's club-based. And like you see with soccer, it was the same thing in football. Well, I'll tell you, there was one day, we're out of practice with Karlstad, and then I see a bunch of adults like putting on that are not a part of our pro team, and I see them all putting on pads and getting ready to go get warmed up. And I walk over to our owner, I'm like, "Hey, what is that?" And they say, "Oh, that's our development team." And I was like, "Can I play in that?" And he's like, "Yeah, you want to be the head coach of it?" I'm like, "Yeah." So I was the head coach and quarterback, and I ended up winning. I was the MVP of the league.
Let's go.
It's one of my favorite stories, man, because, I was 29 at the time. I was 29 years old, and I got to put the pads back on. And like I was saying, I was a backup D3 quarterback, but at the same time, hey, man, I was the player of the year in the country of Sweden. So, yeah, man, that was an absolute blast for me, man. And, and obviously, one last thing, just scheme-wise, I'll tell you, I had to invent and you saw us play at Bishop's with Tyler Buckner, our last year. Yeah. And everyone that doesn't know how San Diego football worked back then is when you keep winning, you keep moving up, and it's kind of similar that way. And, last year we were playing the largest schools, in the CI finals, we played El Camino Bishops, who has, we have varsity. We don't have JV, freshman, they're 28 guys on the roster. We're playing the largest schools. We played Poway, your alma mater, in one of the most epic games ever. We ended up winning that thing 52-51, like just shootouts all the time. The year we led the nation in offense. And I say that because we ended up inventing this style of offense that a lot of people didn't do, where we were just playing with three linemen and we started splitting people out. Well, I say that like we had this incredible year offensively. Well, we do some of that here. And I say that because now after 3 years, it's developed its own system. Our director of football data brought this to me. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Number one offense all time in college football as a system because of what we've done. It's crushed the S&C teams. Against Tennessee, you'll see each touchdown last year was out of that broken set stuff. Against Georgia, we popped a 20-yard gain on those guys. So, man, that goes into the other side of football. I think football, what's so fun, it goes back to the people and it allows the creativity of. That's what I love about the game. We add the creativity to the game, but creativity starts with, all right, who are our people? How do we put them in position to be as successful as possible? So, man, I know that's a long-winded story on two different ends, but
no, I love that. I actually do have one more parting question here before we finish. I know you just talked about Europe, but what was that like living over there? And, you hear stories. That's one of the places I've never been. I've been all over the Pacific. I've been, my mom's from Costa Rica, right? Like I've been all over except for I haven't been to Europe. So what's that like?
Well, I'll tell you, I want to start with this. It felt like we started, man, it's like we went full circle. This is awesome. Europe is a second home to me. And you know what made it that is the game of football. It was my only language to be able to speak out there when I first started. I got hired, I was 24 years old when I was the head football coach of the Austin Brook Tigers. Half the team Actually, probably more than half. Our average age, I think, was 27. So most of the team was older than me. That's the only national title they've ever had during that time. And I say this because, if I came in there and we ended up going undefeated in one of the most dominant teams I've ever been a part of, we averaged 48 points a game and average giving up 6. And I say this because, if I came in there and thought I was the grand poobah of football, these guys aren't going to respond to me. If I came in there, I look different than everyone, and I tried to be like a German. That ain't me. And why am I bringing up Europe in that? Again, it goes back to what we just talked about. It's about people. Well, for me, about people meant like, what's my common ground with everyone out there? Football. Football is my common ground. And so what really made it, I'll tell you this, and that's why I share this to everyone when I was out there too. Well, all I tried to do was hopefully make this game, and I know it sounds so simple, and maybe I'm too soft in this, but hey, it worked out. All I wanted them to do when they stepped on that field, anytime they stepped onto the field, they came out there and they were having a blast. Guys out in Europe, well, most of the time back then, what the last league I coached in, the ELF, is a professional league, fully professional. Every guy's paid. When I was out in Germany, and this is most of European football, those guys work 9 to 5 jobs, and then you practice at night. So if I came out there and I was the cliche movie coach, which actually a lot of guys, I'm not going to knock on people, anyone that goes out there, but I'll tell you this, like if they try to approach it in a way like, hey, we're going to, I get discipline, but it's about treatment of people. If I didn't make this enjoyable for them, guys that are choosing to be out there, we're not going to have a shot. And I will tell you this, why we were so dominant, those teams, is I think every guy, you'll hear this from every coach that goes out there, it's hard to get guys to show up to practice. It was never hard for us. We always practiced with our full team. I always hear coaches out there that say, you know what, well, we can only do 7 on. Well, there'd be days that we could only do 7 on. Let's make it fast and fun and have them, again, enjoy the game. But if I don't approach it that way, if it's just about, hey, how we're going to play on Sunday or Saturday, I think we're missing it. And going back to Europe, right? You asked me about that itself. It's about immersing into the culture of it, right? And that's where I think it marries to the game of football, because it wasn't just about, man, I would hold our meetings. I'll tell you this, probably, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but I'd hold our meetings at a bar, on a Wednesday. We'd go out and we'd watch. I would host film, have the beers out. Hey, we call it beer and ball, right? We'd have the beers out watching film. I got a great photo of my team in Sweden. They're in my apartment. We're all drinking beer, breaking down the next opponent. Man, that's what the game's about. It's about enjoying it. And that's what I loved about Europe, because it's about the community. It's about going. And when I was in the ELF, man, we played in 9 different countries. That was freaking awesome, man. And experiencing those other places and knowing it's more than just, hey, what we're doing on the field. And you know what that does correlate to? We got a bunch of guys, and I have a great photo of one of our receivers at the end of the year when we won the championship in Vienna. He had a post that said, we have a bunch of grown men. He's 28 years old. Said, our locker room, bunch of grown men that would walk around saying, I love you. Grown ass men saying, I love you. That's why we were different. Champions. And I'll tell you, man, and that's why I go back to it. My common language was football. I love football. You love football. If you love the game and you show people the love through this game, and that's how they play it, and you immerse into all of it, again, going back to the people, the results come. And I get to, under my name now, when I go out there and all that, I get to hold this title of, hey, you're in the Hall of Fame. I didn't do anything. Those guys did it. And it was about those experiences. And the best part, and I know I'm going to sound like this romantic cliche coach when they all say it, but I'll tell you this, the best part when I go back and I talk to those guys is hearing the memories, is hearing like, man, remember when we did it like this? Hey, remember? And then remembering the plays, remembering the hard moments. Like I remember when we were at Barcelona, when I was with Vienna, we were down 21 points with 8 minutes left, and we came back and won. You don't do that if you don't love what you're doing together. You don't do that if you don't trust the people behind you, because the other part of that is, let's think about let's bring it to the game. You're down 21. The other reaction people can do is, oh man, we don't know. We're getting stuffed on offense. I was calling a terrible game. And all of a sudden, man, it was just belief after belief after belief. And we win that game on a 90-yard touchdown. And man, I'll tell you, that's what it's about. And Europe, is the same game here. Great people, man. I love this game. Doug, I appreciate you, man. This has been a blessing for me. And what you're doing, again, I'm going to repeat that. What you're doing for this game and what you do, pouring into the youth of this game, is the future that's going to be successful in this game. So thank you, Doug.
I appreciate those kind words, my friend. You're too kind, and I appreciate your time. I know it's busy. It's 100 miles an hour as a college coach, and for you to take the time away from your workload, man, I appreciate you. And reach out to me when you're back home in San Diego.
Hey, man, I'm missing a California burrito. I'll tell you that. I'm ready for that. So, thank you, Doug.
Thanks for joining us for Football IQ presented by American Football IQ. If you want to help your players see the game better, think faster, and understand more, go check out American Football IQ and what they're building for players, coaches, and parents. That's at AmericanFootballIQ.com or click the link in the description. Follow all we're doing at Coach and Coordinator Network and follow us on X at Coach K. Grabowski.